Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Monday, April 7th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today will reach 82.2 degrees, dipping down to a low of 54.3 tonight. Coming up on the show, we will explore why China is accusing the United States of economic bullying. We will also take a look at the current process and methods the U.S. employs for carrying out deportations today. Stay with us for these stories and more, coming up next on Alex's News. We turn now to the increasingly tense trade relationship between the United States and China. Things seem to be going from bad to worse, with accusations flying and new tariffs being slapped on goods. Joining us now for more details is our news reporter Ethan. Ethan, what sparked this latest round of fireworks?
Well, Grace, the immediate trigger, according to reporting from ABC News and CBS 42, was a significant move by the Trump administration imposing an additional 34% tariff on Chinese goods. This isn't just out of the blue. It stacks on top of 10% tariffs implemented back in February and again in March. So we're now looking at a hefty cumulative tariff rate of 54% on certain Chinese products.
54%? That's a massive jump. What's the reasoning behind this latest hike? Is it just about trade deficits?
The administration has linked it partly to combating China's alleged role in the fentanyl crisis, as CBS 42 noted. But it's also part of a much broader initiative Trump has dubbed Liberation Day. ABC News reported on this announcement, framing it as a major push to reshape U.S. trade policy.
Liberation Day. That sounds quite dramatic. What exactly does that entail beyond these tariffs?
It's a package deal aimed at what the administration sees as unfair trade practices. Based on analysis from Perplexity API sources, two key components stand out. First, imposing reciprocal tariffs, basically, matching the tariff rates that other countries charge on U.S. goods. The idea is if you charge us X%, we'll charge you X%. Second, and this is a big one specifically for China, revoking the de minimis import tariff exemption.
Okay, Ethan, break down de minimis asterisk for us. That sounds like some complicated trade jargon.
Happy to. Think of it as a duty-free allowance. Until now, parcels valued under $800 could enter the U.S. from most places, including China, without facing any tariffs. It's why direct-to-consumer companies like Shein and Temu could ship things so cheaply. Perplexity API analysis highlights that revoking this specifically for China, declared under a national emergency over trade deficits, is meant to stop companies from dodging tariffs on larger shipments by breaking them down, control illicit goods like fentanyl components, boost U.S. competitiveness, and bolster national security.
So closing a loophole, essentially, but one that companies like Shein and Temu heavily relied on. How has China responded to all this? They can't be happy.
Definitely not happy, Grace. Beijing's response has been swift and sharp. As reported by both ABC News and CBS 42, they've accused the U.S. of, quote, unilateralism, protectionism, and economic bullying. They immediately announced a matching 34% retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods. They've also suspended imports of specific American products. A sorghum, poultry, and some bone meal from certain U.S. companies are now blocked.
A tit-for-tat on tariffs and hitting specific U.S. exports. Anything else?
Yes, two more significant moves. ABC News highlighted that China is tightening its export controls on rare earth minerals. These are elements vital for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles to defense technology, and China dominates the global supply, so that's a serious leverage point. And they've formally initiated a lawsuit against the U.S. at the World Trade Organization, or WTO, challenging the legality of these tariffs.
Taking it to the international courts. What are Chinese officials saying publicly?
Chinese Foreign Affairs spokesperson Lin Jian, quoted by ABC News and CBS 42, stated the U.S. is prioritizing quote, America first over international rules, harming global supply chains and economic recovery. He was quite direct, according to CBS 42, in criticizing the America First approach for undermining global stability and vowed China would firmly safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. Despite the tough talk, there's also an air of defiance. ABC News noted a comment in the state-run People's Daily simply saying, "The sky won't fall."
Interesting mix of condemnation and confidence. Are they trying to work behind the scenes too?
It seems so. CBS 42 reported that Chinese officials have met with representatives from major American companies operating there, like Tesla and GE Healthcare, urging them to help resolve the tariff situation and protect supply chains. They're simultaneously trying to reassure other foreign investors that China remains a stable place for business, despite this escalating dispute. It's a bit of a diplomatic tightrope walk.
It certainly sounds like a complex situation, with potentially huge ripple effects for consumers and businesses globally. Ethan, thanks for breaking down this escalating trade story for us.
You're welcome, Grace.
Welcome back. Deportation remains a complex and often contentious issue in the United States, particularly under the current Trump administration's approach. Joining us now to break down the process, the costs, and the controversies is our news reporter, Chloe. Chloe, let's start with the basics. Can you walk us through what typically happens when someone faces deportation?
Absolutely, Grace. The standard process, often called removal, is quite involved, according to reporting from WHRO, Public Media, and NPR. It usually starts with identification. Someone is flagged as potentially removable, maybe after an encounter with law enforcement. The Trump administration has actually broadened who gets prioritized and even brought in agencies like the FBI and DEA to assist ICE with arrests, as WHRO noted.
Okay, so after someone is identified, what's the next step legally?
When the Department of Homeland Security issues what's called a Notice to Appear, or NTA, think of it as the formal charging document, as explained by NPR and Perplexity API. It lays out why the government believes the person is deportable and summons them to immigration court.
And that court system is notoriously backlogged, isn't it?
Massively so. NPR estimates the backlog is around 4 million cases. Individuals go through hearings, like a master calendar hearing to sort out preliminary issues, and then potentially a merits hearing to argue their case for staying. They can hire a lawyer, usually at their own cost, who might argue for relief based on things like how long they've lived here, as WHRO points out. During this time, they might be held in detention, though they can request release on bond.
So if the judge ultimately rules against them?
If the judge finds no legal basis to stay, or their claims fail, a final order of removal is issued. This can usually be appealed, but once all appeals are exhausted, ICE arranges the physical removal, often by flight, back to their home country. This requires cooperation with other nations, as WHRO highlights. Alternatively, sometimes individuals are granted voluntary departure, letting them leave on their own.
Now, Chloe, we're hearing the Trump administration is using some different, perhaps faster, methods. What can you tell us about those?
That's right. One is expedited removal, which NPR and Perplexity API note allows for quicker deportation, often bypassing a full court hearing for certain people caught near the border or who can't prove they've been here continuously. There are safeguards, like asking about fear of return, but concerns remain.
And there's something much more controversial involving a very old law?
Yes, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It's a wartime law, historically used against citizens of countries we're formally at war with. According to analysis from Perplexity API and reporting by NPR, the administration is invoking it against alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which they've designated a foreign terrorist organization.
But we're not at war with Venezuela. How are they justifying that?
It's legally complex and highly contested. Perplexity API analysis indicates the administration argues the gang's actions constitute an invasion or predatory incursion, allegedly directed by Venezuela. Critics, cited by Perplexity API, call this an unlawful misuse of wartime powers in peacetime, essentially trying to sidestep the usual due process because the act limits judicial review. A federal judge actually blocked these deportations temporarily, questioning the legal basis, though the administration is appealing.
That sounds like a significant legal battle brewing. What about the pushback generally?
Immigration advocates have filed lawsuits, arguing these methods violate due process, as NPR reports. In an interview featured on Texas Standard Public Radio, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin defended the administration, stating due process is followed but might look different in national security cases. She cited specific deportations, like an alleged Mississippi 13 member, asserting they had intelligence and judicial review.
Is there any alternative being pushed besides forced removal?
Yes, the administration is promoting self-deportation. McLaughlin, in that Texas Standard interview, mentioned the CBP Home app. It allows individuals to arrange their own departure without being arrested, potentially preserving their ability to return legally later. Over 5,000 people have reportedly used it, and it's presented as a less expensive option.
Speaking of cost, this all sounds incredibly expensive. What's the price tag on deportation?
It's huge, Grace, though exact figures per person are tricky. WHRO notes the large budgets for agencies like ICE, CBP, and USCIS, totaling billions, though not all goes just to removals. But analysis cited by NPR via Perplexity API estimated a hypothetical mass deportation of over 13 million people could cost a staggering $315 billion. That includes arrest, detention, and transport. So you can see why promoting self-deportation via apps, as mentioned by Texas Standard, is seen as a cost-saving measure.
It really puts the scale of this into perspective. It seems the entire system is under immense pressure.
Absolutely. Both WHRO and NPR highlight the overwhelming court backlogs and resource limits. There's wide agreement the system needs reform, but as we know, a recent bipartisan effort in Congress failed. So the administration is seeking more funding while navigating these intense legal and logistical challenges. The reporting from WHRO, NPR, Texas Standard, and analysis by Perplexity API all paint a picture of a system under serious strain.
An incredibly complex situation with significant human and financial costs. Chloe, thank you for untangling that for us this morning.
You're welcome, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. An American tourist, identified as 24-year-old YouTube creator Mikhailo Viktorovich Polyakov, has been arrested in India after attempting to contact the isolated Sentinelese tribe on North Sentinel Island. Polyakov reportedly used an inflatable boat to reach the heavily protected island, part of the Andaman and Nicobar archipelago, which has a 3-mile no-go zone. He spent about 5 minutes ashore, leaving a Diet Coke and a coconut, collecting sand, and filming with a GoPro camera, which later led to his identification and arrest. He faces up to 5 years in prison. Authorities in groups like Survival International condemn the act, stressing the grave risk of introducing diseases to the Sentinelese, who have no immunity and have violently resisted past contact attempts, notably killing American missionary John Allen Chau in 2018. Financial advisors are urging investors to think twice before bailing out of the stock market, despite recent turbulence. Significant market declines, including a historic $5 trillion drop in the S&P 500's value following President Trump's tariff plan announcement, have spurred panic selling. However, experts recommend maintaining a long-term perspective, recalling principles like those of Warren Buffett, who advises against rash decisions based on short-term swings. While historical interventions like the Fed put have stabilized markets, Current economic uncertainties, including trade tensions and inflation risks, make future conditions less predictable. The advice emphasizes reassessing portfolios for stability rather than reacting hastily to volatility. Severe flooding continues to plague the U.S. South and Midwest after days of relentless heavy rain. Swollen rivers have inundated towns across Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Missouri, reaching near record levels. Flash flood emergencies were issued as the deluge caused widespread damage. Tragically, at least 18 deaths have been linked to the storms, including fatalities in Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Missouri. Mandatory evacuations were ordered in some areas, power was shut off, and extensive damage to buildings and infrastructure, including a building collapse in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, has been reported. Rescue operations are ongoing as authorities urge caution. In state tax news, Mississippi and Kentucky are on a path to potentially eliminate their income taxes on wages, a move not seen in any U.S. state in 45 years, since Alaska did so in 1980, buoyed by oil revenue. Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves signed a law gradually reducing the income tax, with potential full elimination by 2040, tied to revenue growth targets. Kentucky is pursuing a similar strategy. The goal is to become more competitive by attracting businesses and residents, mirroring states like Florida and Texas. Critics, however, warn this could increase reliance on sales taxes, potentially burdening lower-income individuals more heavily. And finally, George M. Johnson's memoir, All Boys Aren't Blue, has topped the American Library Association's 2024 list of the most challenged library books in the United States. The book, which explores Johnson's experiences with queerness, race, and masculinity, has faced bans and challenges in numerous school districts due to its explicit content and themes. The ALA notes a trend where most challenged books feature LGBTQ+ themes, and that challenges increasingly originate from organized groups. Despite the controversy, the book is a bestseller and award winner, and Johnson is involved in legal action challenging book bans. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.